everybody, and welcome to our complete Dominaria set review. I am Evan Irwin.
I am Ruben Bressler.
And I'm Aaron Campbell.
All day, we are Magic Mikes, and we are powered by Kickstarter fans all over the world who help support and create this content you're watching right now. We're going to talk about every single card in Dominaria. This is our second segment where we're talking about all of the blue cards. Now, we're going to get started here with Academy Drake. It is a blue and 2 generic mana 2/2 common Drake that has a kicker of 4 generic mana. It has flying, and if it was kicked, it enters the battlefield with 2+1/+1 counters. So you have a 3 mana 2/2 flyer, or you have a 7 mana 4/4 flyer, which is fine, not the greatest rate, but sure. it's a bonus. You would play this if it was just a blue and 2 generic mana 2/2 flyer.
Yeah.
If the fact you got a kicker with it, that's cool. So that to me says it's great and sealed. You're always going to play this card.
And draft,
and it's good in draft, 100%. It's not a first pickable card or anything, but I think it's very easy to pick it early. And that's good.
I'm always happy to kick it with Drake or a Drake.
Yeah. Wow. I'm happy to kick it with Drake. Yeah.
I mean, Ninja would approve.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. It's nice when the money makes a difference, but it don't make you different. You know what I'm talking about? Wow. Shout out to Dreezy. In any case, 2/2 flyers for 3 in blue historically have always been great. Typically they show up in blue or white. This time Snapping Drake got to be in white in the form of that 3/2 flyer for 4. This is the 2/2 flyer for 3. Happy to put equipment and auras on this. Just a solid creature. 7 mana for a 4/4 flyer. Not the best rate in the world, but later in the game you'd rather have a 4/4 than a 2/2 when you got all lands in play. So.
Right. And it is an Academy Drake, which calls back to Tolarian Academy, which is absolutely fantastic. So you have the historical sort of aspect to it. Academy Journey Mage is next.
Magali, what are we gonna do
with the wisps?
You? Like whenever Magali's one of those artists that every time I look at a piece of art, I think it cannot get better than this. She's peaked. This is it, and then something else comes out, and I'm like. Oh,
we were at Peak Magali.
How are you like this?
Well, Academy Journey Mage is a blue and 4 generic mana 3/2. It is a common human wizard that this spell costs 1 generic mana less to cast if you control a wizard. Also the first instance of this spell being referenced, which is a change. When Academy Journey Mage enters the battlefield, return target creature an opponent controls to its owner's hand. Now, it used to be this cost 5 mana for a 3/2 that did that ability, and you didn't get any you didn't get cost reductions off of it. And it was playable, and it was fun, and I was happy with that. As a 5 mana bouncer guy, like a very expensive Mana War, but still a good card. Not an amazing card, but if you're in like the wizard deck, you're in the wizard build, if you're able to draft wizards, I think this gets a lot better.
Yep.
Otherwise, in sealed, it's still a terrific effect and able to turn games around.
And we're seeing a lot of this. This is a tribe that they're really pushing in this set. There are several spells that we'll talk about later that have this sort of cost reduction if you have a wizard. And I really like this. At least 2 of the spells we're going to see later are cards that we will never get again, but they're willing to give it to us with this sort of bow around it. And I appreciate that. Rather than telling us we can't have something, sort of like follow the thread. You can't have Armageddon, but we'll give you this thing, and I want more of this. This is great.
A little bit of a light creature text, creature type flavor to this set with the knights in white, the wizards in blue and red. There's a couple others sprinkled around, the Saprolings, for example. 4 mana for a 3/2 bounce a creature is a rate that we got in Ixalan as well, but it came on a raid trigger.
Right,
which meant you couldn't do it pre-combat. This is a huge deal to be able to do this pre-combat if you happen to have a 2 or 3 mana wizard in play, get the blocker out of the way before you start attacking. Definitely very powerful.
Yeah, this card is super sweet. However, next up is the Antiquities War, which brings us another special guest. Let's see who it is and what they have to say.
What's up, Magic Mike's crew? It's Seth, probably better known as Saffron Olive. What's up, Aaron? I'm real. Hello. Anyway, what's up, Ruben and Aaron and Evan? First off, thanks for asking me to do this video. Really sweet. Definitely appreciate you giving me a chance to talk about one of my favorite Dominaria cards. And the card I'm going to talk about is truly one of my favorite cards from this set, and that is the Antiquities War. So Antiquities War is a blue rare saga. Basically 4 mana. First 2 lore counters let you dig 5D for artifacts, put them in your hand. The last lore counter, or the ultimate, I guess, it's kind of like a Planeswalker ultimate, but the final lore counter, the 3rd lore counter, ultimate, whatever you want to call it, lets you turn all of your artifacts, creatures, non-creatures, whatever, into 5/5 artifact creatures until end of turn. So I like this card for 2 reasons. First off, I just like like it personally. It's very reminiscent of two of my favorite planeswalkers, or actually two versions of one of my favorite planeswalkers. It is essentially the +1 of Tezzeret Agent of Bolas twice, and then the ultimate of Tezzeret the Seeker. So I like Tezzerets, I like artifact decks, I like blue cards, so I like it personally. The other thing is, I think people are kind of sleeping on this card for Standard. The fact that we have a lot of powerful artifacts in the format, walking ballistas, we have a lot of vehicles that are pretty good, not even considering all the new Dominaria stuff. I think this card might have a legit shot to show up in Standard decks, and that's not even including treasure tokens. It seems like it's pretty easy to flip a treasure map and just kill your opponent. Turn this into I win the game with like suspend 2 for 4 mana, and I win the game with suspend 2 for 4 mana seems like a kind of card that might have a shot in Standard. So anyway, I love the Antiquities War. Also interested to see what all you have to say about it. Anyway, enjoy the spoiler show. Thanks for asking me on, and yeah, talk to you soon.
I love him.
That was a delight.
Oh my god.
That makes doing the special guest type stuff really worth it.
Absolutely. And I think he's right. I think that the Antiquities War, this one behaves more like a Planeswalker than any of the others that I've seen thus far, in that you have this sort of like, I mean, it doesn't do, I mean, it's 4 mana and it doesn't really, I mean, it draws you a card, I guess, but like, it doesn't really do anything, and it doesn't really do anything. It's a Planeswalker your opponents can't attack, which I think is the big deal. Right. So if you're able to have control of the board already when you are able to play the Antiquities War, it's going to draw you into your the Mox Ambers, get you at the vehicles. I think is a great point. Those naturally have the abilities already. So if you turn them into 5/5s, not just crewing them, the Aethersphere Harvesters will still have flying. The various other ones will still have lifelink or trample or whatever, what have you. Not to mention that your Ambers get bigger. Your 0/0 walking ballistas with +1/+1 counters will become base 5/5s with +1/+1 counters. Your Karn Construct tokens, which are 0/0s, will also get the same benefit. I definitely think that this has constructed applications.
So for those who aren't aware of exactly what it does, or those who are listening, it's a blue and 3 generic mana for a rare saga that says for the first 2 chapters, look at the top 5 cards of your library. You may reveal an artifact card from among them and put them in your hand. Put the rest in the bottom of your library in a random order. Now for the 3rd and final chapter, sort of the ultimate if you will, artifacts you control become artifact creatures with base power and toughness 5/5 until end of turn. Now I think the coolest part of what Saffron noted there was treasure tokens.
Yes.
Treasure tokens are just everywhere thanks to Ixalan. They're super easy to make. And the idea that you're like, make treasure tokens, and like your opponent kind of sees it coming, and they're like, oh my god, you have a group of 5/5s coming, and there's not much I can do about that, and this is really scary, and it's finding super sweet artifacts along the way. Like, that makes this really interesting. And the idea that you could actually trigger off 2 Antiquities War, you know what I mean? Like, you play one on turn 4, and you play one on turn 5. Turn 6, the first one is ultimating, while next turn you get to ultimate again.
Sure.
So they have to answer it over and over again. So this is one of those cards that probably needs a lot of context. You need to really kind of see it work, and to really understand, I think, A, why it's 4 mana, and B, why it's rare.
Improvise is still in the format. That's the thing that lets you sort of convoke with artifacts. I remember when Kaladesh and Aether Revolt came out, people kind of flirted with improvised decks. And so, you know, if this is something you're trying to do, you know, you certainly have mechanics and tools that can really push you in that direction and give your artifacts more to do, like you said, than just being a treasure map. Well, that treasure map or just being a treasure token. That treasure token can now help you cast things. If they're with improvise, can become creatures. I really like that angle.
I think that the servo tokens are a big deal as well. Now that you mentioned improvise, there's lots of ways to get multiple, you know, Angel of Invention, for example, one of our former preview cards, lots of artifact creatures that you can make, lots of treasure tokens. I definitely think that this has a possibility.
Awesome. All right. Next up, we have Arcane Flight, along with another special guest who chose Arcane Flight as their card.
I think I have an idea.
Let's see.
Magic Mics. Hello, I'm Nathan Holt. I am the producer of Enter the Battlefield and the former host of the cult classic Walking the Plains comedy web series on MagicTheGathering.com. I'm here to talk to you about a card in Dominaria that really begs a lot of questions. I'm of course talking about the card Arcane Flight. It is a 1 mana aura that gives a creature flying and +1/+1. Okay, pretty simple card, but let's talk about why it's intriguing. And I'll start with you, Spike. Spike? Sure, you're going to tell me that this card is playable now because unlike the classic card Flight, which depicts a panicking zebra, this card gives +1/+1 in addition to flying, so therefore it's a limited playable. Wrong. That's not a big bonus. Flight was always good. You just throw it on a big green fatty, they take to the skies, and you win the game. All right? So don't pretend like Flight wasn't a good card and act like Arcane Flight is because of the +1/+1. It's a negligible bonus. You were wrong about the Zebra. The Zebra was powerful. All right? It didn't look comfortable up there in the air, but it still got the job done, attacking for whatever Zebras attack for. Okay, Johnny, you're up next. Johnny, you're a combo player, and I already talked about the obvious combo, right? Just put it on a big ground creature and win the game, all right? But I'm curious, what else could you do with this card? What's like a weird way to use, like, say, butter in a recipe, or olive oil, or salt, or something so basic, like a 1-mana aura, that it actually catches people off guard? So I have no ideas. I'm sure you will have some. All right, Timmy. Crawworm is now a 7/6. All right? This would make it an 8/7 flyer. Timmy, this conversation is over. Go. Brew. Go, 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 go. Melvin. This card is not complicated. Good. Melvin, I don't like you. I hate it when cards are complicated. Keep it simple. All right? This is a brilliant card for its simplicity. So stop asking for more complicated cards. I don't need 7 lines of rules text. I don't need the flavor text pushed off the card entirely. All right? Just learn to love simplicity. I'm sick of you. We're done. Vorthos. All right, this is where all the questions come in. Vorthos. Let's look at what's going on in this artwork here. It's concerning for several reasons. All right, we're at the Tolarian Academy, and there is some sort of wizard professor, or perhaps just a super senior student there, and I can't tell if he has thrown the cat off of the ledge, or if he's saying, "No, cat, why did you jump?" Right? So there's 2 problems here. If it's the former and the wizard threw the cat off the ledge, seeing if it would fly, I need to know were any animals harmed in the making of this card. All right? And along those lines, Steve Prescott, artist. Artists so often, paint from models that they have posed for them or photographs that they've taken. Did you throw a cat off a roof? Were any animals harmed in the making of this card? There are ethical problems, okay? This is a problematic card from an animal cruelty perspective, both from Tolaria and from Steve Prescott. Okay, but maybe the wizard is not throwing the cat off the ledge. Maybe the cat just got into the ether, found a little sack of magic, stuffed his face in it, like whatever catnip is for earth cats. Maybe ether is like, the cocaine of catnip for cats, especially one. Look how fluffed out the tail is. He's got blue eyes. I mean, the cat is bugging out, right? And if the wizard administered the ether to the cat, again, ethical problems, administering drugs to animals against their will. Let's look at the scale birds. Scale birds are a staple in magic art. You see some birds flying around. This looks like a pretty big cat. All right, I want to know the power toughness of this cat. All right, the wings give it +1/+1, I suppose. What's adding power to this cat? Just wings? Are the wings used as weapons? That's what I want to know. And what's going on with these globes in the background? All right, globes are a thing. I need that explained. Karn is standing next to a globe in his card. So anyway, I think there's a world of questions to ask about Arcane Flight. I appreciate your time humoring me here. You guys are great. Magic Mics. Can't wait to see this finished product. Talking about Dominaria, a set that we've all been looking forward to for a long, long time. As an original Dominarian myself, I will be playing this Arcane Flight card, and I will win game 2 and lose in 3 games. I will win game 1 or 2, and I will get blown out in the other 2 games. But this card wins games, if not matches. All right? Have fun with it. Arcane Flight. Peace out.
Wow.
My goodness.
That was
That was a lot.
That was a delight as well.
That was great.
I never understood the ethical or
The ethical implications of Arcane Flight.
yeah.
Thank God
Well,
the wizard is here.
Thank you so very much, Nathan Holt, for that. But we are not done, as we have a second special guest for this card. This card inspired 2 different special guests. Had no idea that they were both reviewing the same card.
Yeah.
Just chose whatever card they want.
Hi, Magic Mike's Maria here with one of my cats, Moxon, to talk about a card from Dominaria. I'm definitely going to talk about Arcane Flight. That's why I'm holding my cat, who definitely wants to be here. I think this card is great. It's a single blue mana, gives +1/+1 in flying. I love it in the SRAM deck that I was playing at Grand Prix Seattle. So blue, white SRAM auras, and I think it might replace 2 copies of Cartouche of Solidarity. I'm not 100% sure, but I think it could be cool. Also, it's a really cool card with a flying cat on it. In Limited, how is this card? Fine, depends on what you're drafting, obviously, or what was in your sealed pool, but it could make your big bad fatties huge and flying. Whee! And that could be really fun. And my cat is loving this. Yay! Keep going with your set review.
That kid is gonna cry for help.
Oh my God.
Wow.
Jeez.
You know,
Wow.
they think they're going to be fun, and then they end up winning.
I love
even
when
more
just
fun.
when the cat's had enough and thinks it can't get any worse.
Yeah. She picks it up and gives it Arcane Flight herself. Yeah, she Maria took this deck to a 10-5 finish at Grand Prix Seattle.
done.
Wow.
It's a deck. I mean, it's a deck that's in the line of Blouses in Legacy and Bogles in Modern. Arcane Flight, very powerful effect, especially on cards like Danitha in this set, and then SRAM, obviously, you're going to have a lot of effects on that. And obviously, the artwork has inspired everything.
The Pauper kids are really excited about this, specifically Pauper Bogles. Bogles is like a tier 1 strategy in Pauper, which is frightening. And yeah, this is something they're really interested in. You know, they're limited in card choices, but having a common, +1/+1 in flying can make something really, really terrifying.
And little did we know the heart of the ethical
Implications.
questions.
Yeah.
What does this mean? Is he throwing the cat?
I
or does
hadn't
the
thought of
cat?
that.
It looks to me like the cat jumped itself, and he's going, "Oh,
Right, I think the cat went for the bird, and then when he saw that, he was like, "Whoop!" And then
Yeah.
yeah.
jumped out just like Maria's cat, Moxon. Similar name to Mox Ruby, by the way. But the cat is all of the Moxon. I'm just
God.
one.
That cat
This is ultimately, in my opinion, is a fine limited card. It's not something I ever take really early. You're going to get a lot of these late. And sealed, it's okay. If you have really something like a big bunch of fatties you want to give evasion to, that's nice. I would never play multiples of this card.
I will say that as the art has inspired 2 different people to send in stuff for our set review, foils of this are going to be through the roof.
Oh, yeah.
Because the art is going to look really good in foil, and it's just,
It's also one of the
adorable.
official playmats. Anytime a new set comes out, Ultra Po.
Ultra Pro!
We were talking about Pauper. We went to Ultra Po.
I know, right?
That's Pauper. Ultra Pro usually picks like 3 or 4 pieces, and I know with Amonkhet it was the gods, and yeah, this is one of the 4 they chose for this.
So, it's got to be the cat. It has to be the cat. Artificer's Assistant, speaking of cute, adorable
The
things,
adorableness of this set
is unreal.
is insane.
Artificer's Assistant is a 1 blue 1/1 flyer. It is a common bird, and whenever you cast a historic spell, you scry 1. So whenever you cast artifacts, legendaries, and sagas are historic, descry 1, you look at the top card of your library, and then you may put that card on the bottom of your library. So this is your bird, Fran. And he's your friend. And he needs to be your friend and wants to be your friend. And I lived in a world once upon a time where a 1 blue 1/1 flyer was too good. Too good for Magic. Way too good. Now they have amazing abilities on them. And it's super
familiar.
As opposed to drawbacks,
yeah.
where they used to be, I think it was Cloud Sprite, could only block creatures with flying. We got rid of the drawback and added benefits.
Yeah, and it started with Judge's Familiar, essentially. But here we are with a new bird, Fran. And that's Frand, Fran.
Fran.
And we love him. And we want the bird Fran to be our friend forever.
Don't even need the D on the end. It could just be Bird Fran.
Bird Fran, yeah.
But yeah, the magpie stealing stuff for you.
This is ultimately
is great.
a 1-drop that actually does stuff.
Yeah.
It's a 1 mana 1/1 that you're okay to play. It has evasion. It can get in for a few points of damage.
Yeah.
It gives you some really cool benefits on the long
And
game.
fixes your draws later in the game as well.
Yeah. So even if you're not attacking with it, it's still giving you value, and that's very important. So while it's kind of silly, and I don't think you should run more than one of these, it's not anything you pick early and limited, but you'll get it mid to late. It's a fine card. It's better in sealed because you're able to keep it around longer, able to play spells, and really filter through your deck a little bit more. But still, bird frame. Befuddle. Woo! Befuddling. This is a good old bread and butter magic card, if you will. It's a blue and 2 generic mana for a common instant. Target creature gets -4/-0 until end of turn. Draw a card. That's what it does. Sure. It's a blue shrink effect, and you get a card out of it, which is cool, so you get to cycle it. It's not the most exciting combat trick, yet it is a combat trick. This is what blue gets to do, is kind of depower some of the powerful stuff, lets you gang block something stupid, or able to get above, in a trick sort of situation, and it replaces itself, which makes it that much better than a normal shrink effect.
Yeah. I don't remember if this is a reprint. It's certainly similar to, for example,
Very similar.
To hysterical blindness, which gave all creatures minus your opponent's controlled -4/-0.
I think there's one called Hydro Surge too. We
Hydro
see effects
Surge,
like this all the time.
Dizzy Spell. Yeah. There's a ton of. This is Blue's version of combat tricks. The ability to replace itself at instant speed while also shrinking is it's fine.
It's fine. Again, this isn't something we're writing home about. This is something we're trying to say, like, it's a fine trick. It's a good 22nd, 23rd card in limited. Yeah. It's nothing I'm going to be super excited about opening or drafting. But if I need something in blue, at the very worst, it cycles, which is nice. Yeah. Blink of an Eye, also known as End of the Royal. But for this version, Blink of an Eye is a blue and a generic mana for a common instant with kicker of a blue and a generic mana. Return target non-land permanent to its owner's hand. If this spell was kicked, draw a card. That's what it does.
Simple. The art on this card reminds me of, in the original Power Rangers, there was a villain called Eye Guy, and it was just this villain that had eyes everywhere. It looks exactly like it.
Yeah, this art is a little disconcerting.
It's pretty creepy, I'm not going to lie.
Into the Royal was a highly played Magic card. I think that this is going to be no different. 2 colorless, 2 blue, cycle and tempo. Or just 2 mana, bounce something. Always going to give you good options. Both of those effects are things that you want in limited and in standard. And so I think that Blink of an Eye is going to see a decent amount of play.
Yeah, I guess they just didn't want to try to put the Royal in there.
I guess.
Which was the thing.
Well, the Royal, I'm under the impression, is pretty unique to Zendikar.
Sure.
Like when you hear that word, you think, kind of like when you think, guild, you tend to think of Ravnica. Right. There's just certain word association things that you really won't see Royal outside of that.
Right. So ultimately, Blink of an Eye is a super playable limited card. Not something that I think you pick super early because you can get it mid to late.
Right.
But it's always should be in there if you got it, because in terms of sealed, I would say 100%.
Oh, absolutely.
Because
I think in draft 100%. I would play 2 of these when I had them. Yeah. The one concern I have about this card is typically you say shorthand for when you use a trick on something, and when you blink something in our common parlance, that means something different than Blink of an Eye.
Right.
So you're going to say, all right, 4 mana, blink your creature, and that means something different in the parlance of momentary blink. Originally would exile and then bring it back.
Right.
This does something else that's a little bit confusing, but we'll just have to change the language to adapt to it.
And those eyeballs, man.
They're super creepy, man.
Can be used, when I look at this, you can bring sagas back, if you want to get some extra value out of that.
Nice.
If there's just problematic things you can't otherwise deal with, Planeswalkers, artifacts, this is a clean answer to that.
Right. Remember, it doesn't have to be their stuff. It can be anything.
Yeah.
Move on here to Cloudreader Sphinx, of which we have a special guest for. Let's see what they have to say.
Hey Magic Mike's, it's Min, known online as Pharmacist Judge. And the card I chose is Cloudreader Sphinx, a 3/4 creature Sphinx for 1 blue and 4 generic with flying, and when it enters the battlefield, scry 2. I've always loved Sphinxes. I had a mono blue Sphinx tribal commander deck before Wizards even printed a mono blue legendary Sphinx in Magic Origins. Looking at the card, I think it has some strong potential in limited. A 3/4 flying body for 5 is serviceable, but the scry 2 is very valuable at that point in the mana curve in most mid-range decks. It can toss lands on bottom if you need gas in the mid-game, or it keeps land on top for mana if you want to drop your bomb. While being common, it can also tussle with most common or uncommon creatures in the air, the only exceptions being Sarah Angel and an kicked Academy Drake. I'll admit it's not going anywhere in constructed formats, but I think it probably will take a spot in my Unesh Commander deck over Horizon Scholar. Now for a bit of trivia. Cloudreader Sphinx is actually the second Sphinx ever to be printed at common. Drawer Isle Avenger is the only one that shares that distinction. But that's my review of Cloudreader Sphinx. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you around.
Oh, Pharmacist Judge.
Oh, that's awesome.
He's one of our mods when we do our live stream, and he's just been a super fan of the show. He's an actual judge.
And an actual pharmacist as well.
Actual pharmacist, so he wears all the hats. And
Truth
really
in advertising.
Lovely.
He was also top 100 in the Great Designer Search 3.
Yeah, shout out to him.
Answered more questions correctly than I did. Had some great info on Cloudreader Sphinx. I mean, 3/4 for 5 flyer is playable in limited. That is just always a thing.
100%.
If it was 4 mana, that's a 3/4 flyer for 4. That's absurd. That's almost always rare. So 3/4 for 5, you expect it, especially in blue. He's right. At 5, you don't have a ton of great 5 drops. 6 tends to be where you get your big power flyers. 3, 2, and 3, you have your, maybe 4. You don't even have that many good 4 drops in blue. But this is definitely fits the curve, does everything you want it to be doing. The scry 2 is huge. Being able to scry 2 lands to the bottom or dig for answers is a big deal. Great info.
Yeah, and I love the fact that he knows it's the only common Sphinx other than Dwar and Avenger, which is super cool. Also, the fact that the Pharmacist Judge is here because he supported us very much so on Kickstarter, so thank you very much for that, which is awesome. And at the end of the day, I'm 100% playing this thing in sealed 1,000% of the time. In draft, I think there's some curve issues you could have. So like maybe I don't want to play 2 or 3 of them, depending on how your deck's made. But again, a 5-mana 3/4 flyer is great. Scry 2 is just on top of it, which is awesome, and that's a fantastic card.
We do need more common Sphinxes. If the various iconic flying creature types have commons at their various levels, the dragons, the demons, the angels, we did need to have common Sphinxes become more common, and this is the first step.
Yeah, I mean, because they've been talking about drakes, a lot of drakes. As we were talking about earlier with Ninja, Drake and Dreezy.
So now the meme would be Drake going like this to Drakes, and then the meme of going like this for Sphinxes.
So up next is a incredibly clever way to put a set name, because when the set name thing came out and it was like, look at all the set names in the flavor text and all this other stuff, and I was just like, but where is Cold Snap? Because Cold Water Snapper, also known as a cute way to put Cold Snap in a name, is a blue and 5 generic mana for a 4/5 hexproof turtle. It's also a common.
Why?
It's a common turtle, hexproof. Just does the thing. It's got a butt.
Big turtle.
That's the big old turtle butt.
Nothing wrong with it. Ain't nothing wrong with a butt you can't touch. Look at that hexproof. You ain't touching that butt. You can look, but don't touch that butt.
That's right. You think you can, but you can't.
Flavor text in this set has been A+, and this is yet another hilarious example. For generations, the inhabitants of Orvada have hungered for turtle soup. For generations, the turtles have frustrated their ambitions.
I love the shades of green on that turtle.
Yes,
Very
absolutely.
Lush, bright.
Oh, man.
Yeah, it spends a lot of its time in cold water, low body temperature, low metabolism, only comes up once every decade or so to snap at the air. An excellent thing to put that legendary enchantment on.
Put Arcane Flight on that thing.
Hey!
Absolutely.
A flying hexproof
all of
turtle.
your auras should definitely try to target hexproof creatures.
Yeah.
And this one's no different.
This is, because it's common, you're going to see it more often. It's also 6 mana, so be aware that if you run too many of these things, they could be stuck in your hand. So while it is cool, it is powerful in its own way, it also could be a trap to pay 3 or 4 or whatever. I would play at least 1 to 2 in a sealed deck, probably just 1 in a draft deck, because again, 6 mana, kind of tough. But overall, like as a turtle, the flavor, the goodness, the sneaking in the cold snap in the name was just
great.
Mwah, I loved it.
Well done.
Curator's Ward is next. It's a blue and 2 generic mana for an uncommon enchantment aura. Enchant permanent. Enchanted permanent has hexproof. They're moving away from hexproof. I don't know if you know
I've heard that.
They tell
I've
me.
heard that. I'm
Okay.
not seeing many examples of it.
But enchanted permanent leaves the battlefield. If it was historic, draw 2 cards. So if you want to just protect your best creature that isn't legendary, this still works for that. But if it happens to be historic and you stuck it on there and it has like a sacrifice ability on your artifact or whatever, you get to immediately draw 2 cards off of it, which is really
kind
cool.
of reminds me of, do you remember in Return to Ravnica Block, there was a card called Soul Ransom, which was like a control magic, and if the creature died, you got cards. It's kind of what this reminds me of a little bit.
A little bit, yeah. I like it. This is a kind of a weird card.
Very strange. Usually the hexproof starts on the creature and then you enchant them up. This is the other way around. I really like how this plays. I really like how this plays with sagas, because the sagas are their own sacrifice outlets after 3 turns.
True.
Really good on things like old traveler's amulets that you have sitting around in your hand, or other sacrificeable artifacts, your Crook of Condemnations, your Silent Gravestones, whatever, what have you. And then, of course, if you put it on a legendary creature, those tend to get in combat and sometimes die, and you typically want to give them hexproof as well. So this is a really nice protection thing that allows you to give a pseudo-diplomatic immunity to, making it very difficult for your opponents to target, while also giving you the benefit of drawing 2 cards just in case it leaves.
Like, I appreciate the fact that you can put this on your legendary creature and be like, you want to give me 2 cards?
Yeah.
get you on the card?
I have to say, though, World of Warcraft has ruined me for just Curator references. Curator was a famous villain from Karazhan. I was one of the bosses.
Yeah.
And even just seeing the word Curator, I hear the Curator is not accepted.
I had a Curator deck in Hearthstone that I really enjoyed quite
I just
a bit.
hear that voice. I'm reading it all of, enchant permanent. And just, oh no.
I got no idea what they're talking about.
Curator drew cards in Magic Online
Sure
or
did.
in Hearthstone
Sure did.
As well. So definitely
Shout out
on
to the
brand
Curator.
for the Curator.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. Moving on to Deep Freeze, also one of my favorite arts of the set.
Yeah.
Which is just terrific.
That was you when we were talking about World of Warcraft. You were just, I got nothing.
Blue and 2 generic
Screenshot
mana.
that, everybody. All right.
Blue and 2 generic mana for a common enchantment aura. Enchant creature. Enchanted creature has base power and toughness 04, has defender, loses all of their abilities, and is a blue wall in addition to its other colors
it.
and types. It just becomes the wall, and Ice
Becomes a
Age.
wall of ice.
And Ice Age is right in the flavor
Right in the
text.
flavor text.
Which is
referenced as a historical event.
Yes.
So, which I really like as well.
Again, clean way to deal with specifically gods. The activated abilities thing is very important because you can put a pacifism on a Scarab God, but it's still going to do Scarab God things.
Yeah.
This gives you a really neat way to deal with things that we don't really have very much.
Very exciting for the Xur the Enchanter commander decks as well. They didn't really have a Lignify kind of effect that made things lose all abilities. So if you had a very difficult creature to deal with that had indestructible or had some other sort of way of getting around things, this is a very clever way of being able to handle those.
I also appreciate the callback to the wall creature type.
Yes.
Whereas back in the day, walls can't attack. That was the big thing. Walls can't attack. And later it was like, well, maybe other stuff can't attack, but it's not a wall.
Right.
So we have to come up with a word. So they came up with defender.
I just thought of something, and this might be taboo to do, but for the previous card, I thought of another great use for it, Muldrotha. If you get rid of that enchantment, you can then bring the enchantment back and possibly get some value there.
Good. I like that. And you can do that with this as well. So it's another
I didn't know if we could bring up previous
No.
cards.
Yeah, curators, both of them being auras, one you want to target yourself with. But yeah.
I appreciate also this is sort of a budget answer to a stupidly overpowered mythic.
Yep.
Like, oh, that creature's really
It also
good.
deals
Let's
with
just put that
Shillelagh,
on
too.
there.
If you have Shillelagh on the board, you can deal with her. So.
Shalai, Shillelagh, Sahili
We're just going to have different
Raish,
names for her throughout the
Shahuru,
show.
Shaboop-bop,
Shellac,
Skidoo-boom.
See, ba 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 da ba.
Excuse me. Diligent Excavator is next. A blue and a generic mana for a 1/3 uncommon human artificer. Whenever you cast a historic spell, target player puts the top 2 cards of their library into their graveyard. Now, this is your very, very classic.
Yeah.
Build around the uncommon. Make it work. If no one takes the excavators, you get all the excavators. Because you get all the excavators, you get to mill your opponent out. And I always want to draft this deck, and it never ever works out for me.
There's a passionate subsection of the community that wants nothing more than to mill people. They're in every format. Anytime a card like this comes out, they go to MTG Salvation and they swear that this is the one.
There's the Sage Eye Denizens, whenever you
God
cast
bless
a blue
them.
spell. There's Hedron Crab, there's Manic Scribe. We've seen this card before.
Yeah.
This one in particular is interesting for Standard as well. It's another way for those Gate to the Ether, Godpharaoh's Gift decks to try to put more stuff into their graveyard. Those decks are already running a lot of artifacts, and so it's just another early roadblock that can mill yourself. Don't know if it'll get there, but yeah.
Yeah, I'm not necessarily seeing it myself. For me, I think this is very much a limited card.
Yeah.
And it doesn't really work if you don't have the shell for it. Like, I don't think this is very much playable in Sealed, for example, because it's really hard to work your deck around it. This is a card that if your opening pack sucks, and you see this card in uncommon slot, you're like,
May as
you
well.
know what? I'm doing this. I'm doing it, and no one else is going to be doing it. And like, you pick up all the excavators, pack 1 or pack 2, and you're able to get all the artifacts and all the historic spells, sort of pack 2 or pack 3. Maybe you'll get there, and if you do, make sure you let us know, because I've never been able to do that.
Yeah, once ever in the draft format, it'll work. You'll try to draft it like 10 times. It'll work once, because the other times there won't be enough open, or someone else will pick an excavator like 10th that you thought you were going to wheel 13th. But the one time that you open 4 of these, it's going to be great.
Oh my God. 10% of the time it works every time. Next up is Divination. Good old-fashioned. Blue and 2 generic mana for a common sorcery that says draw 2 cards on it. Ta-da!
We did it. Council of the Soratomi, pay 3 mana, draw 2 cards. It's good. You're going to play these in your limited decks.
Yeah, you're going to play pretty much all of them. Don't go too crazy. Don't necessarily pay 3 or 4 copies, in my opinion, particularly in draft. In Sealed, it gets a lot better because that format is slower. But Divination in and of itself is a fine Magic card. If you're in blue, you should play it. Don't splash for it. It's not that good. It's just a fine bread and butter, run-of-the-mill blue card. It's hard to say a lot about it because it's been printed 87 times.
Yeah.
The most interesting thing for me about this version is, first of all, looking at a small orb with a telescope is the most Tolarian Academy thing that I can think of.
Right.
The flavor text is also spectacular with Narumeha, who's, I believe, a card in the set as well.
He's a legend.
Half your studies will be learning the laws of magic. The other half will be bending them. Very good. When you have iconic cards like this that are very simple, you want to have really iconic flavor text, and they really hit it out of the park with that one.
You could argue that's like the ultimate spike flavor text. I mean,
Yeah.
you spend so
Agreed.
much time learning rules, and then
Yeah, definitely another breaking the fourth wall flavor text. I like it.
Next up is Hominid Explorer. A Hominid, y'all.
Yeah.
Oh man. A Hominid Explorer is a blue and 3 generic mana 3/3. It is a common Hominid scout. And when Hominid Explorer enters the battlefield, target player puts the top 4 cards of their library into their graveyard. So this is very much along with your Excavator.
Yep.
You want all your historic spells, and you want to get your Hominid Explorer. Like, they've given you multiple cards at common to help you build that deck. Because again, it's all about living that dream.
rolling with the Hominid. You Clueless? You remember? No? That's cool.
From Clueless?
Evan is
like
Clueless
1998?
on that one.
I'm sorry, it's been too long.
This was the first officially spoiled card. This was the first card that we saw in its full form. And when it came out, I was like, man, we're going to get Homirids.
Yes.
Turns out we only got one Homirid, which is a little unfortunate. I wanted more of the crab people. First name crab, last name people. I was really looking forward to having more Homirids come about.
This is the first time you'll ever see someone want more crabs.
Yeah.
Wow.
I was like, oh, Homirid Explorer. Well, it's the first card in the set. Why not Zoidberg, right? We get to have our... It's a hill giant in blue, by the way, which is kind of a big deal. We used to get sea snids in blue, which every other color used to get 3/3s for 4. Blue used to get 3/3s for 5. And now they're actually, this is actually a little bit of a power upgrade.
Oh boy.
Believe it or not.
It's not that much of a power.
It's not that much, but I mean, a little bit.
It's okay. It's a card that you'll probably run as a 4-mana 3/3 in your various sealed pools. And if you're getting that draft deck, and the draft deck we're talking about, it's going to be an all-star. And great, because the card's not very good, you're able to get a whole bunch of these things. And swing for 3, which isn't, not for nothing, as it were. In Bolus's Clutches, oh boy, 2 blue, 4 generic mana for an uncommon Story Spotlight. Legendary enchantment aura. Enchant permanent. You control enchanted permanent. Enchanted permanent is legendary. I love, like, it's almost like poetic.
Yeah.
How this, you get the permanent, you can enchant the permanent, you control the permanent, and it's legendary. And the story itself, your contract is in default. You belong to me now. Serve or die. It says Nicol Bolas to Liliana, and she's just kind of, like looking back at her Gatewatch friends and like, bye, this is my new BF.
I signed something, so.
The Vorthoses have been going crazy over this card with the implication that Liliana might be the big bad of this set. Going into it, we were under the impression that she might be getting a redemption arc in terms of facing her brother and dealing with what she did to him and putting him down as sort of an act of mercy, if you will. But, some people have speculated that Bolas was kind of manipulating the demons all along and getting her to get rid of them. And so she would be free to sort of be his, and that, who better to lead sort of a Lazotep zombie army than, the Queen of Zombies herself. And so I think it's fascinating if that were to sort of be the plot twist that, every set kind of has its big bad. And so we think it's Bolas, but really it could be just a really off the chain, pun intended, off the chain veil Liliana. And there's a lot to... Nathan was kind of talking about all the questions he had for Arcane Flight. I think this card opens up a lot of Vorthos questions.
Off the chain wax,
Off
if
the
you
chain.
will. But it's weird because right now, at least as we were recording this, we don't know the full story. We don't know where it's kind of going. We know the story spotlight cards. We kind of have an idea. Obviously, the flavor text also gives you that idea. But that's really neat. Now, as the card itself, this card is a limited bomb. This card is absolutely terrific. It is huge. It is first pickable. It is always playable. I'll play every single copy I can get my hands on. Controlling a permanent even. It's not just a creature. It's not just like a sweet control magic. It is anything they have. This card is fantastic in that regard.
Confiscate was a constructed playable card. Now, that was in Urza's Saga and 8th edition, or 9th edition maybe.
Right.
But it was still constructed playable. Take Possession later at 7 mana also saw some constructed play. Split Second helped that a lot. Lay Claim, not so much. Lay Claim was in Amonkhet, 7 mana, had cycling, you control enchanted permanent, didn't see any relevant constructed play. So it's sort of in a little bit of a gray area in terms of if in Bolas's Clutches is going to see constructed play. But the big factor here for me is that this is 6 mana in a format where it takes very, very few turns for Planeswalkers to ultimate. And so being able to steal a ready to ultimate planeswalker within Bolas's clutches is going to be on my radar.
And can I just say, this art has received so many complaints from people that are like, what's wrong with Bolas's face?
Yeah.
That people are furious.
No one even knows. Like, he's a gremlin now. He used to not be a gremlin, and then he had like a longer nose snout thing, and then he has a short snout thing. I don't know. Yeah. He's just a giant dragon dude with crazy horns.
Yep.
And the card is fantastic. Karn's Temporal Sundering, speaking of fantastic cards, is 2 blue, 4 generic mana for a rare legendary sorcery. This is the blue legendary sorcery. You may cast a legendary sorcery only if you control a legendary creature or planeswalker. Target player takes an extra turn after this one. Been a while since we heard that phrase. Return up to 1 target non-land permanent to its owner's hand. Exile Karn's Temporal Sundering. So recently, I've been playing the blue-red God Pharaoh's Gifts decks and whatnot. And I've, playing sort of against the meta and whatnot. And there are multiple times where if they had this card, or I had this card, the game would have just ended.
Yeah.
Because if they had it, they would have taken an extra turn and bounced my God Pharaoh's Gift. If I'd have it, I'd have bounced their biggest blocker and get through with whatever I'm doing. So like this card, a Time Warp effect, which is usually 5 mana to take an extra turn. If you had 1 more mana on top of it and you're bouncing their scariest threat, their your biggest concern, that's real. Also, Noah Bradley killed it.
Yeah.
I was worried that you were going to put this. I know that you've also been playing Taking Turns in Modern, and I was like, Evan, no.
That's not where it goes. It goes in Standard. I don't know if it's going to go in Modern.
Technically, I think it's going to be easier to cast a legendary sorcery in the Taking Turns deck, because you typically have a Jace of one kind or another in play, whereas this is going to require you, for the God Pharaoh's Gift deck, to have like a Captain Lannery Storm,
or you can have an
God.
Bolas's Clutches, and that solves the problem. There's your legendary creature.
And also steals your opponent's God Pharaoh's Gift in the same deal. Flavor text, obviously, referencing both Time Spiral and Planar Chaos.
Wow.
Karn being the Silver Golem, as referenced in the flavor text to Stroke of Genius. Go look that one up if you haven't. The silverness of Karn is because silver passes unchanged through temporal apertures of various kinds. And so Karn isn't necessarily affected. Like if we tried to walk through the Doctor's Time Box, then we would be, rendered sundered.
We would be sundered, all right.
We would be temporally sundered quite a bit.
Yo, dog, you sundered? And you're like, bro, I'm sundered.
Yeah, we'd be. I'm so sundered. We'd look like Ron Weasley after he accidentally transported Ron. If you remember that scene.
Is that a ginger joke?
No.
Okay.
It's a human joke. We're meat bags. We are not built for time travel.
Sure.
So.
But Karn is.
And
this card is awesome.
Absolutely.
And if it has to be set, you play this in your sealed deck 100%.
Yeah, of course.
You can probably draft this first pick, I can imagine.
Probably.
It's
if
fine.
you first pick it, then you're gonna have your draft is gonna look a little weird.
Yeah.
You're gonna overvalue some of the uncommon legendaries a little higher. But yeah, definitely in effect. Especially in limited, taking an extra turn is a huge deal because the combat steps are so much more important.
And bouncing their best thing is monstrous. But
it's a very common tactic in Vintage even. Sometimes you cast Time Walk just to be able to get yourself an extra turn to find the tool to deal with the thing. Sure. Being able to bounce the thing and saying, God, give me something I can do to deal with this, or even just countering it on the way back when they simply try to recast it is an option.
But I'm not sure paying 4 more mana is worth it.
No, not in Vintage. I'm just saying that strategy of, okay, I can't deal with this thing now, give me 1 more turn and let's hope I find an answer.
Right.
It's just really interesting that A, this is the legendary sorcery for blue, which is very powerful, and B, the idea that, you get your Time Warp, but you also get sort of an unsummon into the royal-esque type effect.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which is great. Merfolk Trickster is next. It is a uncommon, a 2 blue, 2/2, uncommon Merfolk Wizard with Flash. And when it enters the battlefield, tap target creature an opponent controls. It loses all abilities until end of turn. This is neat.
Yeah.
This is a very potent card for Standard and Modern and potentially Legacy. Loses all abilities is a massive ability. You can turn off an opponent's Tarmogoyf. You can turn off your own Death's Shadow and make it a 13/13 for the turn. That's a huge deal. Not to mention the fact that it is both a Merfolk and a Wizard, so you can put it in Merfolk decks and Standard. You can put it in your Wizard decks and your limited decks. If Wizards becomes a thing in Standard, then the Wizard text becomes relevant. 2 mana Flash. Flash is obviously a hugely relevant effect. And even if your opponent just has like a until end of turn it gets this, effect on it, you can just turn that off for the turn, and that is a huge deal.
I think this really shines in Standard. You know, one of the things that the older Merfolk decks have, like in Modern Legacy, is they could just simply go under you with Island Walk, where you can have, you know, your own board state and they're just going to go right through you. Standard doesn't seem to have that, and I really feel like the only way that Standard Merfolk is going to do well is by either being bigger than what you have with their Lord effects and with Kumena, or by making your creatures so small that you trample over them that way. So I think it's more applicable in Standard, but I'm never surprised to see, whenever I see a creature type Merfolk, I'm not surprised to see Modern players testing it and Legacy players testing it. But I think it's really going to shine in Standard.
It just blows out all of the negatives for and also all the positives. Like they're attacking you with a first strike, whatever. Like, no, it's got nothing.
I also appreciate that they're giving more decks ways to deal with, you know, overpriced mythics, if you will. You know, that's something
this turns off gods.
Yeah, I feel like we're seeing these kinds of tools in multiple colors. Yeah. So, you know, one of the complaints we've had on our main show is the lack of answers to very powerful cards, and I feel like we're seeing them really step that up a little bit, where we're not just, it's not like, well, energy's a problem, we're going to give you Solemnity. Yeah. No, this is a problem. Blue has an answer, red's getting an answer. You know, and I think that's great.
This also is a really sly reference in the flavor text to a planeswalker that is a pre-mending planeswalker. I think his name was Bolvar or Bolar.
Yeah.
The art scene on the card Planeswalker's Scorn, I think is the blue one. He's a pre-mending planeswalker. He was a huge player in Dominaria, and he saved basically one of the islands of the Merfolk, and it references it nicely.
Nice. I mean, because the pre-mending planeswalkers were basically gods.
They were basically gods.
Yeah, they were indestructible monsters who never died ever. But yeah, this card just has a lot of possibilities, both good for you. You turn off, for example, you know, if you turn off, like, sacrifice this at end of turn, this gets rid of that. This overrules that. All of those types of effects, just you can negate it in different ways. Oh my God, this card is sweet.
It does a lot of great things.
This card is absolutely terrific. Now, next up is the Mirari Conjecture, a blue and 4 generic mana rare saga, enchantment, of course. And it first chapter says return target instant card from your graveyard to your hand. Second chapter, return target sorcery card from your graveyard to your hand. Third chapter, go nuts. Until end of turn, whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell, copy it. You may choose new targets for the copy. Now, let's be clear. Fork began in alpha. Later, they moved it to blue, and it's always sucked. Like, it's sucked, like, continuously, like, seriously, over and over. They've tried it, they've pushed it, they've added it to things, they've given it to bonus on this, or like a kicker type effect on that. Like, copying effects has just not gotten there. So now they're like, look, you get a free instant, you get a free sorcery, and then you just completely go nuts and go crazy.
I am still not sure this one's going to see play.
I don't think it is.
That's especially because
it's a lot of mana.
So for 5 mana, you get the first counter.
Yep.
For 5 mana, that's a lot.
For 5 mana,
you can't even cast it right away. Like, you could be for
now,
one
this
more
is
mana.
A total bomb in limited.
Right. What I'm saying is
limited
for
is
constructed
huge.
though, like for one more, you could be torrential gear hulking and cast the instant. Like, that's a lot.
And get a body attached to it.
You know what really would, and maybe a girl can dream, but like I would love to see them give us like a Yawgmoth's Will on a saga. Where
You are so greedy. Look. But again, if back in the day, if you just said, look, you know, I'm going to give you a fork for everything you play this turn, I've been like, that's crazy. You can't do that. But like, ultimately, I think it would be fine. This is a bomb and limited because, you know, any instant that you had is amazing. You want to get it back immediately. Any sorcery removal spell you get is going to be terrific. And you just wait. And you just go, okay, on my third turn, when this goes away, I just I'm killing everything, I'm pumping everything. It's amazing.
I really like the story that this one tells. I mean, all of the sagas tell fascinating stories, but you look at the art in this one, and you have Karn's symbol direct the middle of his chest, in between the line where the first and the second lines are on the card. You have the Mirari itself in the Odyssey set symbol near the bottom of the card, all combining into this, what if we combined all these things together? The Mirari Conjecture is just a brilliant name for this, and I think that it's a delightful piece.
Also, Mirari Conjecture makes a fantastic drag name, so just...
Wow, that's terrific. Naven, Dean of Iteration. Love this card. It's a blue and a generic mana for a 2/1 rare legendary human wizard. If a wizard entering the battlefield under your control causes a triggered ability of a permanent you control to trigger, that ability triggers an additional time. Trigger.
Jeez.
That said, the flavor text.
Yeah.
Oh.
Perfect.
Now do it again.
Now do it again.
No, I love it.
Yeah, the flavor text fits the ability super nice. This character is very interesting. If you have this is how this worked with Panharmonicon, since I'm sure that's the question that people are going to ask. You get 6.
You mean Saffron Olive's going to ask?
Well, he's better known as Seth, from what I understand.
Yeah.
But, so I think that it makes 6 of them overall if you have them both in play. So if you play a Snapcaster Mage with Naban, then you can 6 of them in your graveyard.
I feel like they've been kind of paving the way for wizards to do this. I feel like we first saw this with Inara, who was from the latest Commander set, where, she had sort of the wizard's deck and sort of copying things. And now we're seeing it, this one, and I think there's another one that kind of does something similar. And I feel like they're leaning on this being sort of the centerpiece of wizards, is being able to copy and get extra triggers and things like that. And I hope it works. They obviously want wizards to be a tribe or an archetype in the standard. And I think if it is going to work, he's going to be a very important.
He's going to be the centerpiece of it for sure.
Yeah, I mean, they tried to push wizards back with an onslaught block or whatever, and they had
Didn't really work.
goblins and zombies who clearly won that tribal battle. And you
soldiers, I mean, wizards really fell by the wayside in that one.
Yeah, so I feel like this is kind of the second coming of wizards. They want wizards to do something different.
Right.
Like, this is as cheap as they can make it. It's still a 2-1 for 2, which is great.
Yep.
This to me is a card that you don't like. Yes, you could put it in your seal deck if you only have 1 or 2 triggers, but it's not really going to get there. This is a better draft card, because if you first pick this thing, you can really just pull your whole draft around what this guy does. And there's lots of enter the battlefield effects for wizards, so it's not like you don't have stuff to do with him. And really, it's like, well, how much does your opponent, how scared is your opponent of this card? And how they react to it. But Naban is really, really cool. Naru Miha. Is that right?
Sure.
I said Meha.
Naru Meha, Master Wizard, is 2 blue, 2 generic mana for a 3/3 mythic legendary human wizard. It has flash, and when Naru Meha, Master Wizard, enters the battlefield, copy target instant or sorcery spell you control. You may choose new targets for the copy. Other wizards you control get +1/+1. So you have the Lord effect. This is our Wizard Lord.
Yep.
However, they didn't let it get too crazy.
Yeah.
For 2 words. You control.
Yeah.
You can't copy their removal spell when they play a removal spell. That would be unbelievable.
Unrealistic.
This card would have been like ridiculous and limited in stupid ways, and probably even in standard. But you can only copy your own stuff, which means this is 4 mana plus whatever you're playing.
Yeah, that holds it back quite a bit.
It holds it back a little bit. However, you can chain things, which is pretty cool. You put something on the stack, and then you play Naru, and then you copy that, and that's neat.
I don't know, I'm having visions of that blue-white, do your healing salve thing, and then Naru Meha.
Sure. Of course,
And she's a lord, so she's pumping all of your wizards all at the same time.
Flash Lords are a big deal. Thistledown Liege was a card that I have a lot of experience with, being a white 1/3 that pumps all my white creatures and blue creatures, but I was playing white creatures.
Right, of course.
And so being able to leave up counterspell mana, for example, with Naru Meha, or have this in your hand, very similar to Widwin, the Biting Gale, which was another 3/3 legendary with flash for 4 that allowed you to keep your options open. Flash threats, very big deal. Pumping all your other wizards, also a very big deal. And that middle 4 lines of text, I think, is just gravy on top when you get to a late game and you're like, well, I've got this, Karn's Temporal Summoning, might as well cast it twice.
I got 10 mana laying around.
Exactly.
As you do.
Late and sealed, you do. I mean, if you just happen to open the right combination of rares and mythics. So it's, this card is quite good, very impressive.
Very, very. I mean, it's neat. Like, it's not one of those, in sealed, it's fine, because at the end of the day, if it's just a 4 mana...
it's just going to be pumping your wizards most of the time. I think that middle section is really just gravy.
The middle section is great. What I'm saying is, ultimately, if it's just a 4 mana, 3/3 flash guy, that's okay.
That's okay.
Or girl, if you will.
Pump your wizards, too. I think that's awesome.
Right, which is cool. It's not like unplayable garbage or whatever. It's just good. But if you have wizards, and particularly if you're able to, get a healing salve. No, what's it called? Healing something? Whatever. The new healing salve that's better than healing salve. That's great.
Fine.
That's cool. Opt.
Or you can copy this.
Or you can copy Opt, which is amazing. Opt is a blue common instant. Scry 1, look at the top card of your library. You may put it on the bottom of your library, and you draw a card. So all the way back from Invasion, I believe it was. And
originally an Invasion,
was not Scry back then. One of the few cards they actually retconned to be a mechanic card versus actually just saying it or whatever. But Opt in and of itself is a terrific card. It is easily playable in all of your limited decks. It is good early, it's good late, it's amazing on turn 1, but it's also amazing on turn 7. You're like, I was going to draw a land. Nope, I got some gas. Like that still happens all the time. So
I have to say, my new favorite thing is to watch people who are about to die, furiously cast Opt to, try to dig for an answer, Opt.
Yep.
Opt. And then,
please.
it just fills me with so much joy to be like, keep digging, keep digging.
I got one out, and then they find it that one time because of Opt. That's the power of the card. They got 2 more bites at the apple. As proven by the recent printing, it's playable in both standard and modern as well.
Yeah.
And these are obviously going to be very expensive foils, based on the art having all of that alabaster and shininess in it, in addition to it being a highly played card.
Yeah, Opt's terrific. Precognition Field. This card is weird. It's a blue and 3 generic mana for a rare enchantment that says you may look at the top card of your library. You may do this at any time. You may cast the top card of your library if it's an instant or sorcery card, and 3 generic mana : exile the top card of your library.
I love this. It reminds me a bit of the card Future Sight. Giving a control deck effectively an extra card in their hand is a really, really great thing. I wouldn't mind even seeing this be, I think there might be potential. It's a little expensive, so I don't know if you'd want to run many of them, but when I look at this, I think of Miracles for being a deck in Legacy that wants to really manipulate that top card. And while they can be brainstorming and pondering, maybe running this, I know they're running Search for Azcanta and as a 2 of, but I think this warrants some testing of just, if you really want to make sure you've got a Terminus on top, or whatever it is you're doing, this can really help you get there. And I think there's a lot of potential with this card, and there's so much to it that I'm sure there might be things even I'm missing, but I would really want to get to know this card better.
This is the type of card that is bad and limited. I would not suggest you play this in any limited format, because unless you have just...
I think I disagree with that. I think that this card is really good and limited. You can exile the top card of your library when you don't have nearly as much mana fixing as you do in the Eternal formats. Being able to dig past lands is a huge deal late in the game. This is a great mana sink. It lets you, you don't have a ton of instants and sorceries, but that's mostly irrelevant. You just drop this, and then when you have a billion lands in play, you're like, that's a land, that's a land. Oh, I finally found a creature. And then you just draw gas for the rest of the game, whereas your opponent, 40% of the time, 45% of the time, is drawing a blank for the turn. So I actually think that this is a really good card in Limited.
Right, and I would disagree in that, A, when you play it, it doesn't affect the board at all.
Sure.
2, you have to do 7 mana. You have to pay 7 mana for it to really do much. However, you can look at your top card for free, either cast it for free if it happens to be those 2 cards. So there is a push and pull here.
Sure. Well, I don't think it's a first pick, but I'm certainly not unhappy to have it in my deck, is my point.
I think I would be much happier in Sealed, because it's a slower format.
Absolutely.
And I think in Draft, it's a much less playable card.
Yeah. I think there's a lot of potential here. I look forward to seeing what people do with it.
Right. This to me is a very weirdly constructed card, because you can really make your deck do
I don't see it
things.
constructed. This one I'm willing to pie bet on.
No, I don't feel strong enough.
This one I very strongly feel like this one's not a card that won't see any play in any constructed format.
This being pie bets being we want to throw a pie in each other's face because we feel like a card is playable in some sort of constructed format. This would be a top 8 of a open series event.
Yeah. So it has to top 8 something?
Has to top 8 something.
That I don't feel good about, but I do think people are going to
form the bet. If you want to, we can say like a year.
We'll give you a whole year.
I'll give you a year of legacy and vintage events.
Now the idea is
modern
or
standard.
The best pie bets
any event
lasts from here to M19.
I don't think it's going to top 8 anything, but I do think that we are going to see it on the competitive stage. That's all I'll say.
Yeah, sure.
All right. Relic Runner is next. A blue and a generic mana for a 2/1 common human rogue. Relic Runner can't be blocked this turn if you've cast a historic spell this turn. So
this card's great.
This card is super good. This card will end a lot of games of Limited. This card, I think, is much better in a draft format than a sealed format, just because you can draft more historic spells and make sure you get this going. But overall, this is the type of card that they make and they give you, particularly at common, to end games. This card literally exists so that you don't play 18 turns of staring at each other.
Right.
Like, okay, I can play a thing and get you. I can play a thing and get you. And eventually you can kill them with it. Because Relic Runner is awesome. Turn 2 on the play. Absolutely fantastic. And then late game, you're like, oh, cool. Every other artifact, legendary, or saga that I draw is going to make me get 2 damage in guaranteed. And that is terrific.
Suit it up.
Yep. Spectacular with equipment in particular, because you play the equipment and then equip it and gives it historic with all the bonus. You put your bacon on your cheeseburger, right?
There you go.
You put the lime in the coconut and you mix them both together.
You drink it all
put
up.
the lime in the coconut and then you feel better. Relic Runner definitely is going to end a lot of games. This is the slippery bogle. This is the slippery boy of the format, the slippery lady of the format. This card's really good.
That's fantastic. Rescue. the first reprinting of Rescue since Urza's block.
Urza's Destiny.
I didn't know this was a reprint.
Yeah, I know, right? It's a blue mana for a common instant that returns target permanent you control to its owner's hand. So all the wizards that have all those sweet enter the battlefield abilities.
All your historic triggers.
Oh, so good.
That's what we really have this in here for, is for the historic triggers.
Right.
Shout out to Hercule in the flavor text.
Yeah,
Hercule's
absolutely.
Recall, it's old school.
Yep.
Man.
Rescue was a staple of the old school stasis decks. This is how you reset your stasis to be able to untap your own lands and then recast your stasis.
Of course.
Yeah, this was during the last third of Stasis's playability. It was played alongside with Rescue because it obviously came around a little bit too late in being Urza's Destiny for it to be a huge player in the extended metagame. Wow. Just one blue mana, very low mana requirement, instant speed, save your own. Even if it's not triggering anything or has any particular theme, you get to rescue your own stuff from removal. You get to pull stuff out of combat and reuse it. Not to mention the come into play triggers and the recasting of your historic stuff.
Now remember, the sagas, when that third chapter happens, they goes on the stack. You can rescue your sagas as the last part of the saga is happening, which is terrific.
Now the third, it won't resolve at that point.
No, it'll resolve.
Oh, the third trigger will
goes on the
resolve,
stack.
and then you'll rescue.
No, you rescue it while it's on the stack.
On the stack.
It resolves, and then you can play it again.
Wow.
Yeah, which is really cool. So there's a ton of ways to slice and dice this thing. I was absolutely amazed. I was like, wow, have they made this card before? I'm like, they totally have. And they call it the same thing. And they printed it like 20 years ago. So it's pretty incredible to see it back here today.
Again, this will be a minor player but serious, like a minor player, but a serious part of limited and constructed if it's in either deck. Again, you're not going to play this in most of your limited decks. You're going to play it specifically in that blue-white historic trigger deck most of the time, unless you have a ton of sagas or other things to do with it. And again, in standard, if there's a saga deck that really is using blue a lot, Rescue is going to be able to help you with that.
It's just not a card that I like to play a ton of in a limited format, just because it's cool and it's useful, but if you have a handful of 2 rescues and nothing, that sucks. So make sure it has very specific, applications as to what you're doing, and it's not. I think it's much worse than sealed because you can't really craft your deck around into the battlefield triggers or historic. But where it's good, Rescue is sweet. Sage of Latnam.
Let's talk about old school reprints, kids.
Oh baby, from Antiquities, a blue and a generic mana for an uncommon human artificer with one nice line of text now, 37 lines of text back in the day. It says tap, sacrifice an artifact, draw a card. That's what it does. And my God, you look at Antiquities and it's like a paragraph full of words about how you can't do it when it's going to the graveyard and people can't interrupt you or something.
Bunch of other garbage.
Sacrifices so-and-so. No, tap, sack, draw. That's what you do. And late game, I'm not sure exactly how many artifacts you're going to have in terms of I just want to get rid of it so I can draw a card. That's interesting. Or you could play something like the Archaeologist, where you could sack, draw a card, and then play the Archaeologist and get it back. There's different ways that you can stack that stuff. But the idea that we're taking a card from Antiquities, not on the reserve list, that did something neat, comes back with a nice clean line.
Very flavorful as well.
That is awesome.
This card's great.
Sentinel of the Pearl Trident is a blue and 4 generic mana for a flash 3/3 uncommon Merfolk soldier.
Why are Merfolk flashable? What is that?
They're
about?
fast fishies.
They come at you from the depths.
Angels kind of make sense because they can just sort of
deep in the depths of the ocean
Vorthos
lies
implications for why are they flashing?
I don't know, man. You ever been in the ocean? Those things just come out of nowhere. It's like, fish! I'm scared.
They're quick.
Somebody hold me. Anyway, so it is a blue and 4 generic mana for a 3/3 flash uncommon Merfolk soldier. When it enters the battlefield, you may exile target historic permanent you control. If you do, return that permanent to the battlefield under its owner's control at the beginning of the next end step. So again, the idea of we're moving stuff around, we're bouncing things back and forth, we're getting all these super cool triggers, you're getting rid of your saga, you're going to play it again. It has flash again. This last saga trigger goes on the stack.
Right.
And Sentinel, baby.
Love it.
That's terrific.
Lets you protect your Kamena if you are playing standard Merfolk.
But at 5 mana, it's a little tough to
It's
argue,
a little tough to warrant 5 mana 3/3. Again, the C-SNID stats. I mean, in limited, it's going to be great. You get to protect the queen strategy from removal. You get to re-trigger your sagas. Those are super neat. But yeah, not going to be a thing in constructed.
I don't know if you'd run 4, but I think especially when you are so with standard and there being so. I mean, compared to other formats, there are lesser Merfolk and few Merfolk. I think maybe 1, maybe 2.
Sure. When you got 5 mana for a 3/3, it's like, I don't know, man.
It's tough. I mean, I would note that I think this is largely relegated to limited, but that's okay. It doesn't need to do anything beyond that. I'm happy with that.
Yeah, and maybe we're thinking too much into it. Maybe maybe what it does is enough. Like we're leaning so hard on it being.
I think what it does is plenty.
Yeah, just having a flash protect a historic thing is relevant whether it's a Merfolk or not.
And sometimes it's okay just to run it out to kill their 3 toughness guy.
It's just a cigar.
Sometimes.
It's fine. Like, oh, I didn't kill the super cool, neat, whatever. Like, no, but you killed their best thing that was attacking you because you had a 5 mana.
Shout out to Pearl Trident. Master of the Pearl Trident being a very famous Merfolk lord.
Trident, yeah. Absolutely. Jinx, Yomi Coke.
Slyn Voda, the Rising Deep, is a large dude. A 2 blue, 6 generic mana, 8/8 uncommon legendary Leviathan. With kicker, because the 8-drop needs it, of a blue and generic mana. When Slyn Voda, the Rising Deep, enters the battlefield, if it was kicked, if you paid 10 mana for this spell, return all creatures to their owner's hands except for Merfolk, Krakens, Leviathans, octopuses, and serpents.
We've seen this before in Theros. I think there was a creature that Monstrosity, I think, did the same thing. Or I think there was a spell that did that.
There have been a couple of
Kiora had, I believe, a spell that did that too.
There's also Whelming Wave that notably ignored the Merfolk. And so your Merfolk got returned to your hand when you cast Whelming Wave, which was a bit
this
strange.
Is a neat blue version of a board wave, but that's a lot of mana. You'll notice the wording on it means it can't be abused. You can't really reanimate it.
And that's why it's that's how they could print it uncommon.
Yeah, so when they see, you'll notice that with the ETB trigger, you have to kick it to get the sweetness. I mean, otherwise it's just an 8/8 body, which you'll take. Right. But you really want it for the ability.
I mean, the issue is that it's so expensive.
It's no evasion, island walk, trample, flying, nothing.
Its keywords are 8 and 8. Yeah. That's what it can do.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, for me, I think this is unplayable in draft. It's just 8 mana, and 8 mana is almost impossible to get to.
Let alone 10.
And in sealed, if you get
maybe
some of the,
you got a lot of power stones.
If you're blue green, you got a whole bunch of mana producing guys.
Right.
Maybe you gotta have a really good.
You gotta be dedicated to Slyn Voda.
Seriously dedicated. I mean, this to me as a brawl commander or just a commander in general, as neat. It's cool.
Would you say that you have to go deep on Slyn Voda?
You have to rise deep. Rise deep. Syncopate is back. It is a blue and X for a common instant. Counter target spell unless its controller pays X. If that spell is countered this way, exile it instead of putting it into its owner's graveyard, which is very important these days with Embalm and all the other graveyard triggers we're looking at. So the idea of a Syncopate being able to A, counter a spell for 2 mana, that's very important. B, the artwork is absolutely fantastic. And C, the return of an old classic counterspell. We ain't seen this one in a while.
And exiling, also a big deal.
Yeah.
Syncopate, the original story behind Syncopate, it's been reprinted, I think, once. It was in Return to Ravnica block.
I think so.
And then originally was in Odyssey or Invasion block.
Syncopate?
Syncopate, yeah. Okay. So Syncopate is a portmanteau of 2 different magic cards.
Oh, yeah.
Of Power Sync, which is X and a blue counter target spell, and then do something else. And Dissipate, which exiles the spell.
But that's a real word, though.
Syncopate? It is a real word, but
it's
in Magic terms, it was just, the fact that it was a real word was secondary to the fact that this was this adorable confluence of words that you can stick together. And now I get to use my favorite sentence of Syncopate. I don't think so, Pate.
Wow. Oh my God. Well, Power Sync, for those who don't know, did this exact thing, but it also made your opponent tap all their lands to equal whatever X was, which was crazy.
So basically if they had 4 mana and then they tried to pay a 2-drop, you could Power Sync it for 3, and then it would just tap their mana and empty their mana pool.
Yep.
And Syncopate doesn't do that.
No. But again, the idea that A, it's a real word. B, it powers them all together. Syncopate, I don't think so. Is pretty incredible in and of itself. As a limited card, it is very playable. I wouldn't play a ton of them, but again, counterspells are good, and people run smack into them. Exiling is important, so they can't rebuy.
I'm always the one that's like, why are you doing this? Why are you playing control and limited? Don't do that.
Well, and constructed, I mean, it's going to be another big deal. Obviously, we have censor right now, but that's limited in its capability. Having a 2-mana counterspell that later in the game can scale up is a big deal. Syncopate is going to be a player in Standard going forward.
Absolutely.
And it's been a while since counterspells have really been able to say that.
And interestingly enough, and this is on sort of a whole different axis, the artwork for this, A, is gorgeous.
Yeah.
And B, the artist himself, Tommy Arnold, did something really interesting. He made prints of Syncopate that you could buy for 72 hours.
Wow.
And that was it.
So
and then he never makes any more.
That's cool.
That's the only prints you get. So he makes them collectible. He increases the worth of them. Of course, they're like $50-something or whatever. But like they're super nice. He prints them exactly the way he wants. Nice. You have a cool collectible.
Awesome.
I thought that was really neat.
Sure.
You know,
It's a great idea.
To me, it's always fascinating to see ways that artists can really get the most value out of their work, because artists need to be celebrated and need to be able to make a living. And you know, from all that I know, they can't eke out the living just from what Wizards pays them.
Sure.
You need different ways to kind of get that income.
And that's a really
Especially
unique
if you're
way
not
to do
able
it.
to be one of the dedicated GP artists, you know, who can go to opens and go to GPs. You know, it's a way to generate interest in your product. If you can't physically go there, you make them come to you, and that's a great way to do it.
Yeah, I thought that was super clever, and I'd never seen it before. Tempest Djinn is the color creature thing for blue. It is blue for a rare 0/4. Oh, weird. It has flying. And Tempest Djinn, also note the word Tempest as the name of the set.
Yep.
Tempest gets +1/+0 for each basic island you control. So this thing scales quite dramatically. It really pushes you, obviously, to play only mono blue. It rewards you, of course, for playing those basic islands. And for only 3 mana, as you draw it on turn 7 or 8, you're like, oh, wow, it's like a 5/4 for 3 mana, or a 6/4 for 3 mana. Yep. That also has evasion. That's going to come and kill you. That has the magical 4 toughness. It doesn't get killed with a lot of the burn spells. Like, this card is super, super sweet. Yeah. It is weird in limited, because if you're playing 2 colors,
it gets a little awkward.
It's going to be a 3/4,
well,
maybe a 4/4.
Pro Jared had this in his limited deck at the pre-release for Loading Ready Run, and he was able to go Island, Tempest Djinn, Plains, White Spells, which was very impressive when he got to do it. This is going to be a player in Constructed. 3/4 on turn 3 is no joke.
It's real.
It has flying, so it has evasion. The thing for me that's most interesting is that it references the Marids in the flavor text, which I'm going to go D&D deep on you real quick, all right? So
Not
the
just
Marids,
D&D.
D&Deep, all right? Dungeons and Dragons and Djinns, all right? So the Marids are from the elemental plane of water, and they gave birth to the Water Genasi and a lot of the Merfolk tribes, and they are very well known for being super vain and like high and mighty, and they think they're better than literally everyone, including other Djinns.
Are they taking applications? Because I could
there you go. So they have a very deep magic history. Now they look like genies, but they also have like fishy faces in D&D, whereas this looks like
non-fishy face,
the bad guy from Green Lantern. A little bit. So they've twisted it a little bit in that sense, but yeah, I'm very excited to see a little bit more of that flavor crossover as well, because you have that, you know, Marids aren't just D&D. They're from the, 1001 Arabian Nights and different, there's historical context from other classic works before, and the fact that we're able to not only reference Tempest from a historical perspective, but also touch down with more ancient books and history and literature is very interesting to me as well, in addition to the fact that this card is also just great.
Well, if they didn't want, if they're going back to Theros and they don't want another mono blue type deck to dominate, then
maybe they shouldn't have printed this card.
Maybe they shouldn't have printed this card, because wow, this card is incredibly, if you care about the pips, if you care about the color symbols on your cards, this is one of the best ones. Yep. And we'll get to another one in our next color. But that said, Tempest Djinn, still very, very much a first pickable card.
Yeah.
Very playable, even if it's just a 3/4. Its entire lifespan in your deck, a 3 mana 3/4 is great. So don't be too scared by the pips. Next up, is Tetsuko Umezawa.
Good job.
Fugitive.
This one had enough vowels that we got through it.
I was waiting for
We're
you to
okay
slaughter
with the
this.
Japanese and the Asian names. We've been to Kamigawa. We're a big Kamigawa apologist.
Him to just
So,
really butcher
no, we're good.
this.
Kamigawa did nothing wrong. It did. A blue and a generic mana for a 1/3 uncommon legendary human rogue. Creatures you control with power or toughness, 1 or less, can't be blocked. This card is super sweet. And if you look real close, right there on her belt
She's carrying a Jite.
That's right, the Jite itself.
Shout out to MJ Scott. If you have a chance to look at her work, she's a famous Asian cosplayer. She did a dead ringer cosplay of this at GP Seattle. Shaved the head, committed to the hair. That was her hair that she buzzed. made the costume, and I think she even got to spoil this card, and she just did an amazing cosplay of this. And that is a name that, especially if you play older formats, the Scooby ear, you hear Umezawa and you're like, and like, for a lot of people, I think, and, when I was going through the initial leak, I remember kind of skimming it, and then like, bing, I saw Umezawa, and I was like, I'm listening. And very, very noteworthy name to many players, and I think she really does that sort of storyline proud. And I'm anxious to see if they do anything more with her, and it's just a really neat, really playing into the rogue archetype of being unblockable or difficult to block. I really love this card.
Yeah, the power or toughness, one can't be blocked, is a huge deal. There's plenty of 2/1s and 3/1s that you want to be able to get through in those old school fish kind of archetypes. Just very tricky kind of card that I enjoy quite a bit. So if you have your 2/1 knights that you put your short sword on, they're now unblockable, 4/1s or 5/1s.
That's cute. I'm over here with ball lightning.
Sure.
All right, thanks.
Yeah.
I ain't playing around.
Let's ball
lightning.
Ball lightning.
Two little 2/1s,
Yeah.
6/1.
Bald lightning.
Bald
Bald
lightning into the red zone, ladies and gentlemen.
I would also build a commander deck around her. I like my commanders to be very cheap, and so I had a 2 converted mana cost commander. Oh yeah, you can get started very early and just do all sorts of things.
And it's awesome that we have certain terms that are in Magic that are just like, they're just so evocative, like ancestral, like Lotus, you know what I mean? And you have Umezawa. You say, Umezawa, what?
Yeah.
Excuse me,
as a tournament player, the Jite is what we're most fascinated by, but Toshiro, I believe it was Toshiro, it might have been Tetsuo.
I think it was Tetsuo.
Might be Tetsuo.
Was in Legends.
Killed Nicol Bolas in the storyline, and then, spoiler alert, Nicol Bolas was brought back during the Time Spiral saga. Yeah. Okay. Just in case you hadn't been paying attention.
But it would be a nice sort of, it would be a nice, tying up a loose end or a nice callback if she's somehow a part of Bolas going down. Like, that'd be really cool.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and the card itself, I love the idea of it. First of all, in terms of limited, this could very well be a bomb. If you have a bunch of 2/1s, obviously herself gets through, being able to put equipment on things that are X1 or 1X or whatever, or trigger abilities and things, which is also neat. Like this card is just full of possibilities. I don't think it's a bomb. I just think it's fine. Yeah. But that doesn't mean it's terrible.
Also a cheap legendary to trigger your historic, which I think is also very important.
Yeah, so it's a 2-mana 1/3 that's basically unblockable. Yep. I'm okay with that. Time of Ice. Ah, yes. Blue and 3 generic mana for an uncommon enchantment saga. For the first 2 chapters, it taps target creature an opponent controls. It does an untap during its controller's untap step for as long as you control Time of Ice. And its 3rd and final chapter, return all tapped creatures to their owner's hands. So that's really cool.
Yo, that card is amazing.
This reminds me of Thing in the Ice. I admit that I'm a Merit Lage truther. I remember when Thing in the Ice came out and people were like, what does it mean? What is it from? And I was like, Merit Lage.
Yeah!
I was very disappointed that Emrakul ended up being the big bad. I would have loved to have had it be Merit Lage, but you can see Merit Lage on the bottom of this art, the tentacles, and so, that seems to be something very reminiscent to her, so I love callbacks to Merit Lage, and yeah, this is a lot of fun. I like this.
There's so many references in this art. God. You've got Darian, King of Keldor, and
Limdol
Lavisa Coldeyes. Limdol is the corpse. You've got the Keljoran outpost right there above Darian's head. I think that's Jace on the bottom in between some of the tentacles. You've also got Jaya. There are just so many cards that are referenced from times past. And the effect, by the way, is spectacular, even in limited. Being able to keep your opponent's best thing tapped down for 3 turns, then bounce it to its owner's hand, then to keep something else tapped down for a turn, and then bounce multiple permanents. This card is...
This card is...
It's going to give aggro decks fits, and especially because people have compared sagas to being planeswalkers, and if a planeswalker is bothering you as an aggro deck, you just attack it. But aggro decks typically aren't prepared for enchantments. Right. And so being able to keep track of their things, keep their things tapped down, you can't just do the aggro thing of quick, attack it. No, you specifically need something to deal with an enchantment that's permanent, and I think it's going to give them...
Uncommon, by the way. So you go aggro Merfolk, or blue-white knights, and you go turn 2 knight, turn 3 knight, turn 4, tap down your blocker, add more stuff to the board.
Yeah, it can even be used aggressively instead of defensively.
Yeah, absolutely. So this card, in and of itself, I think shows the power and the flexibility of that, and also it will require your opponent, much like Planeswalkers, to play differently.
Yes.
Like, I'm not going to play my creature when you're going to be able to tap it down next turn and then later bounce it back to my hand. That's dumb. So I want to do something differently, which is really cool. So the power level in this is not to be underestimated. Tolarian Scholar.
It's our buddy the professor,
Sure
who actually got to preview this card.
I know, right? You get a whole bit about how it was vanilla.
Right.
It didn't do anything. It was a bad rate.
Well, it is a vanilla, and it is a 2/3 for 3. It's not a bad rate. Blind Phantasms in blue have historically been playable.
It's fine. It's not unplayable. It's a blue and 2 generic mana
fine.
for a 2/3 common human wizard.
The bears in this block are really good, and so having a 2 power, 3 toughness blocker early, even if it does nothing else, is going to stave off a lot of damage. I'm not embarrassed to play these in my deck.
I wouldn't say that I'm excited.
I'm
I
not
would say
excited
that I
to do
would be
it,
okay.
yeah.
This is my 23rd,
Yeah.
22nd, 23rd card. It fills out the curve if you need a 3-drop.
Right.
Don't be ashamed. Just don't go all in.
Yeah.
Don't pick these early. You'll get them late. Don't worry. Plenty of pass outs of Tolarian Scholars, I feel. Unwind is next, a blue and 2 generic mana for an instant common that counters target non-creature spell, untap up to 3 lands. Now this calls back to the days of Rewind.
Yeah.
Rewind was 2 blue, 2 generic mana to counter any spell and untap 4 lands.
Right.
This is counter target non-creature, untap 3. Now here's the problem, and where our good friend Shaheen Sarani pointed out, which is negate is better.
Sure.
Well, the Pauper kids have been excited about this one. The 2 blue for Rewind is very prohibitive. Being able to only cost 1 blue makes it really splashable.
Yep.
The nightmare scenario, according to Alex Ullman, is to have the Tron decks in Pauper be able to use this. So you counter something and then you untap your lands and then do mystical teachings.
Yeah.
So I think the Pauper, I think it could do some really fun things in Pauper.
Cheating
I don't
on
think,
mana is the big deal here.
Yeah, I think I agree with you in terms of like constructed formats. It may not be great, but I think in Pauper it's going to do some work.
I'm really looking forward to going home and booting up Magic Online and just sit back and unwind.
Wow. Well, I mean, the Shaheen's point in terms of constructed was essentially that 2 mana is what is two. The difference between 2 and 3 mana is monstrous.
Yeah, of course.
Like you play the new Teferi Planeswalker, it untaps 2 lands, not 3 lands.
Mm-hmm.
Now the ability to stop something and have to keep X mana up to keep 3 mana up, even if you get to untap it, is just not good enough based on negate. So moving on into the limited world, I think this card is very good. To be able to keep your sort of defenses up if you have other instants you're able to play. So like, nope, no thanks.
This card is kind of sicko limited in that you can enter your attack step, counter the combat trick, and then play a creature post-combat. That's a huge deal.
Right. Yeah. And this isn't a card I want to have a bunch of. No. You know, maybe one. Maybe one. Really. But that one could very well be the ultimate clutch thing where you're like, no saga for you, thanks. Untap 3 lands, you done?
Yeah.
Right.
That's important. Voldalian Arcanist is next. It's a blue and generic mana for a 1/3 common Merfolk wizard. It taps to add a Wingding, a actual colorless mana. I don't have to say generic here. Colorless mana. Spend this mana only to cast an instant or sorcery spell.
Pretty decent Augur of Bolus kind of type card. You know, sometimes we see these cards in blue that just have like big butts and just sort of help you get to where you need to be. You know, Augur obviously helping you find instants and sorceries, and this sort of helping you cast them. I don't hate this. You know, I don't know if it's going to do great things in constructed necessarily, but I understand the role that a card like this kind of fills, and especially when you are trying to, you know, you want to make sure it's very important for control decks to hit their land drops and have their mana available to them. And I think this certainly has a big enough butt to do some blocking and helps you, you know, be able to cast your counter spells and your draw spells and things like that.
A blue mana dork is just not a thing.
I know.
You ever see it is a little strange, but it makes sense
they've
flavorfully.
made some over the
couple,
years.
but very rarely.
Yeah, and most of them has sort of been Voldalken. I think was
Voldalken,
yeah, I've had a bunch of those.
Vidalcan Shackles, as Travis we used to say. Vidalcan Shackles.
Shackles is great. I don't know. In my opinion, you have to have a ton of instants and sorcerers to make this thing sort of worth it.
Sure.
But just a 2 mana 1/3 really isn't. Yeah. So in sealed, it's probably fairly bad, and in draft, it might be okay if you can really pump up the instant and sorcery count. But at that point, you're like, I'm working really hard to make this 2 mana 1/3 good.
Right.
So you got to start to rethink and reframe what you do.
This is going to be a last pick a lot as well. I mean, you're going to need a really specific deck for these, or you need an early blocker, like if your deck is just full of garbage 4-drops or whatever, and you just need to survive. 1/3s for 2 are fine.
It blocks 2/2s.
I have to add this. I'll never forget the time I tried asking Aaron Forsyth for his insight into Vidalcan Shackles. Like I had lost a particularly infuriating game with it, and I was like, "So Aaron, like what was going on in Standard?" I was like, "Was Blue losing to big creatures? Like what was your reason for this card?" And he was like, "We wanted to."
Yeah.
And I was like, "What?" Why?
Because we could.
I thought there was going to be some deep analysis of like, oh yeah, Blue was really having a hard time. This was an answer to something. The card is dumb. But yeah, he's like, we're just probably doing it.
Up next is Weight of Memory.
Also known as Now Kiss.
Now, Kith, it's TH, it's Kith. Now, Kith it. All right. It's 2 blue, 3 generic mana for an uncommon sorcery that draws 3 cards. Target player puts the top 3 cards of their library into their graveyard.
Sounds good to me.
So I wanted this to work with Approach of the Second Sun, and it doesn't, because the 3rd card you mill is going to be the Approach, which is sad.
Oh, no.
Probably not that was probably intentional.
Probably.
Yeah.
But yeah, draw 3 cards for 5 mana is the rate that you typically get in limited. The 3 cards into your graveyard can be relevant in decks where you want to cast historic things from your graveyard or fill up your graveyard for whatever reason. Perhaps dredgers of some kind. Probably not going to see any play in that kind of deck, but this has
your Hulk is still a card in blue standard. I mean,
absolutely,
being able to flash your things back is fine.
Wait, doesn't your Hulk only get
targets instance, but it mills 3 of your cards.
I mean, if 3 cards are if you're playing a blue control deck, you're probably playing
Gate to the Afterlife, Godpharaoh's Gift again, another this refills gas and also fills up your graveyard.
Yeah, because most of the card draw spells in Godpharaoh's Gift decks are like little 2-drops, like Strategic Planning and Chart the Course, which are cute, but sometimes you're later in the game and you need to get there, and this can.
Card's fine. I mean, you're going to play one of these in every limited deck that you ever get one. The flavor aspect of this card, of these 3 legends in both the literal and figurative sense of the game, meeting together and having this sort of like awkward pause and eternalizing that on a Magic card, I think is a really fascinating choice.
This type of card is often very confusing for new players because they don't understand, like, 5 mana for 3 cards, cool. What are you doing with the rest of it? Because there are other ways to kind of use parts of the buffalo, and oftentimes your graveyard is very much a resource.
Absolutely.
And or you're able to mill out your opponent if you're playing that weird excavator thing.
Lots of homerids, yeah.
That would be super neat to play the homerid on 4 and this on 5 to draw you cards and mill them cards. So there's different ways to slice and dice this card, which makes it really interesting.
Yeah.
Ultimately, again, in limited, you're going to play it in sealed. It's going to be great.
It's not going to be a first pick.
No. Draft, you're going to get it mid-late. You're going to play 1. That's enough.
Yeah.
It only needs to be enough. Next up is Wizard's Retort. A 2 blue and generic mana for an uncommon instant. This spell costs 1 generic mana less to cast if you control a wizard. Counter target spell. Counterspell returns as long as you have a wizard.
There you go.
Which is also very flavorful.
Pretty cool.
Which I'm okay with.
This is referencing, so the flavor text says the second mage. We'll talk about the other wizards card in a later color, but this is cancel that turns into actual counterspell, which is a very historic card in Magic that was blue instant counter target spell. We don't get that rate anymore. Now we get colorless blue effects like that, and but this harkens back to it, and basically the second spell ever cast was one countering another spell, which I thought was pretty fascinating. Just a really cool card. As a note, Soulscar Mage is a 1 mana wizard that exists and sees play currently. There are plenty of other options as well, but that's probably the best in my opinion. So Wizard's Retort, I expect to see a decent amount of play.
Right.
I love that they're doing this. I said earlier, it's always nice to see them give us toys back. Maybe not the way that we remember them, but at least giving us a chance. And if we can meet the conditions, we can relive the good days.
I mean, if you can sort of harken back, in a way that doesn't break the game,
Yeah.
doesn't hurt anything.
Yeah.
Like cancel being a 3 mana counter target spell, this being a better one.
Sure.
Sometimes. That's okay.
Take it.
And it's going to feel great when you pay 2 mana for this.
Yeah.
It's going to feel absolutely amazing. In limited, better in sealed than in draft because you want to be more proactive in the draft. But in
Counterspells
sealed,
tend to not be great in draft. They're middling in limited
Is
in
Snapcaster
general.
Mage a wizard?
It is.
oh yeah,
Oh, no.
of course he is. He's amazing. so that's fair. That's good. So yeah, you get Counterspell in Modern. Everybody, have fun with that.
Hey, that's what people have been asking for, especially after this past weekend with Hartford. The top 8 of Hartford was nothing but broken decks, and it was, why can't we have Force of Will? Why can't we have Counterspell? Well, here you go.
Yep. There you go.
And they gave you the best wizard of all time to use it with. Yeah. All right. So last blue card here is Zahid, Djinn of the Lamp. Another one by Magali. Kills it.
Why?
A 2 blue, 4 generic mana, 5/6 legendary rare Djinn. You may pay a blue and 3 generic mana and tap an untapped artifact you control rather than pay this spell's mana cost. And it has flying. So it is a Mahamoti Djinn that you can pay only 4 mana for.
Right.
Note that treasure tokens exist. and that's a thing, and that's awesome because you just have any artifact. It just doesn't matter.
It's
and then
the flavor of like essentially rubbing
You
the
rub
lamp.
the lamp.
You rub the lamp.
Better cost.
I hate the flavor text, though, I gotta be honest. It's really overbearing.
Sure.
It's a little over the top.
Yeah,
it's
just
like, I get it. He's like a prick.
Yeah.
I mean, it's okay.
Djinns look down on other people, as I discussed before. They're just very full of themselves. And I guess Zahid is no different. I don't know anything specifically about Zahid as a character.
I do not.
And that's been the case with a couple of these legendaries. I mean, we've harkened back to various Capuchins and some other, Nabin is a name that I'd heard referenced before in some of the Vorthos reading, but I don't know anything about Zahid. But this card's no joke. You can play sort of an aggressive artifact-based strategy, play something like Voltaic Servant to be able to untap your artifacts and get a 5/6 flyer on turn 4 pretty easily. So I anticipate this seeing a good amount of standard play.
We used to be excited about 6 mana 5/6s.
Yep.
We used to be like, whoa, that's crazy.
What about
6 mana
4
5/6
mana 5/6s?
Right, flyers.
Flyers, yeah.
So like 6 mana 5/6 flyer was cool, but let's just make it 4 mana and you tap an artifact and whatever. You get that sort of flavor bit in there, which is awesome.
This is coming down on turn 3 quite a bit, by the way, with treasure tokens, Llanowar Elves, other various mana dorks. If you get a mana dork and an artifact, this is in play on turn 3. So it's no joke.
The card is real, and so is this set review. Thank you guys so much for joining us here to talk all things blue in Dominaria. For Evan Irwin, Ruben Bressler, and Aaron Campbell, we are the Magic Mics, and we will return ever so shortly to talk about all of the black cards.
My favorite.